Hello everyone, welcome to this Saturday stream, a little different today. And let me see, Bugar in Hamad already in the chat. Thank you guys for being here and thank you everyone for watching. As I said, if you saw the tweet or if you saw the post, I'm going to switch things up today a bit because usually this time is for our regular scheduled project, which is for used cars. But since Laravel Reverb is out, I just couldn't wait. And instead of waiting a whole week, recording a video, editing the video, I just thought, let's do it live. Screw it. Let's do it live. And I'm going to show you how to use Laravel Reverb using a small example project where we create a kind of a chat box, chat message box that you see in some websites. So yeah, Harrison, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for joining me a little early today. I hope you guys don't mind. But yeah, let's. I'm excited to show you this because to me, it has been like one of the most anticipated packages from this version of Laravel. I was eager to see this come out, and it did not disappoint. There was some snags along the way, but I'm guessing was because they assume that when you work with events that you are assumed to know some other stuff. But stay tuned because we're going to talk about that as well. So let's don't wait anymore. Let's jump in. Let me get out of the way. And let's jump into what we are going to do today. I'm going to be checking chat regularly, but I'm not going to focus too much on it. In fact, let me just set up a timer so I don't forget to check it, maybe in like 8 minutes. So yeah, let's focus for 8 minutes on what we're going to do. What I have here is I'm using Herd for my local development environment. So in Herd, I have a folder here that is just automatically going to create website for me. So let's create a new Laravel project. Let's say Laravel new, and let's call it chat. I'm going to use Breeze for the starter kit. And also I'm going to use Volt with the class API. You can use functional if you want. I'm more used to the class API, so that's what I'm going to use today. Would you like Dark mode support? Yes, I do. PES, we are not going to have tests for today, but let's just test it either way. And GitHub repository, yes, because I'm going to share all of this with you once we're done. Okay, let's leave that running. And for the database, we're going to use SQLite. Okay. Installing everything, database, running migrations, everything so that we can just jump in and get started. How is everyone's weekend, by the way? How are you doing, guys? Let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, you know. So, okay, now we have our application. Let's jump into the chat folder. And we don't have to do PHP artisan serve. We already have an application ready to go. And in fact, let's go ahead and open that right away. I'm going to need a new window here. I'm going to do the things in Google Chrome. And let's go to chat.test. Thanks to Laravel Herd. That should be already ready to go. And I have to say, I love the new design of the welcome page. It looks so modern, so slick. So yeah, we have a login and a register. We're not going to move from here just yet because we are going to first install Laravel Reverb. We are going to start the Reverb server, and then we are going to make sure that we have a connection, a WebSocket connection between the client and the Laravel Reverb server. So to do this, as they sell it in the documentation, this is just one artisan command. It couldn't be easier. So from here, we are going to run php artisan install broadcast. And right away, this command is doing two things. First, is going to publish a broadcasting configuration file, and also is going to publish a new channels route file. This is going to be used for private channels, and we are going to touch on private channels near the end. So stay tuned until the end of the video. Would you like to install Laravel Reverb? Of course, that's what we're here for. So yes, it's going to bring in all of the dependencies that we need. And then it's going to ask us if we want to install the built-in no dependencies required. So for this to work, the client side is going to need a few libraries, namely pusher.js and node.js, something like that. So yeah, of course, install that is going to bring in the client dependencies and then build our assets. But of course, we want to rerun and recompile assets every time we make changes. So I'm going to add a new tab here and then right away install, or actually run a Vite development server. So run dev. You can use npm if you want to. And in a separate tab, since we have Laravel Reverb already installed, I'm going to create a Reverb server. And we can do that by using php artisan reverb start. And now we have a Reverb server running on localhost port 8080. Now, we are going to make sure that the client can listen into channels and listen for events using Laravel Echo. Now, Laravel Echo was installed by default by the install broadcast command, which means that, let's go back to this tab real quick and let's open our project in VS Code. So in VS Code, we have one file in the JS folder called echo.js. This file was created by the install broadcast command, and it modified the bootstrap.js file to actually include this echo.js file. In here, we are initializing both Laravel Echo and pusher.js, which is required for us to make WebSocket connections. So I'm going to use this file to listen to a channel and an event to make sure that I can actually subscribe to a channel and listen for it. So in here, I'm going to do window echo channel, and we are going to call the channel messages. On that channel, we are going to do .listen. And here we have to provide the event name that we want to listen for. And usually this is the name of the event class that we are going to listen. It doesn't exist just yet, but we are going to create it. Sorry, there you go. So let's pretend that we have an event called message sent. So we are going to listen for this event, and whenever we have an event on this, whenever we have an event, we're going to run this callback. This callback receives one parameter, which is the event payload or the event class with the payload. So in this case, I'm just going to console log the event itself. That's all I'm going to do. So with this, I should be able to subscribe to a WebSocket in the messages channel and listen for message sent events. So let's save this. And now, since this is being compiled and reconstructed by Laravel Vite, it should be also present in the welcome Laravel welcome page. So in here, I'm going to open the web tools, and in the web tools, usually you should be here in the all section, but you can just filter by WS or WebSockets. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to refresh. And here we have the details of the WebSocket connection. We have a connection established, and we are subscribed to the messages channel. So that means that the connection is successful, and we are ready to listen for events via Laravel Echo in JavaScript for now. So that was an alert. So let me real quick check on chat. See how you guys are doing. Yeah, Ahmad Harrison, IOOP, Jesus 2045, you think that we can do a heavy POS system only with Livewire, or should we use Livewire with Alpine to get better performance? I don't know about performance. What I do know is Livewire and Alpine usually go hand in hand. You can do amazing things with both of them combined. You don't have to, though. You can pretty much get away with just using Livewire on your point of sale system. But if you want to really do like really custom stuff, like in the client, Alpine is just perfect for that. So yeah, there are definitely a great combination. Vugar, how you doing? Thank you for being here. So yeah, let's go back and keep going with our project. Thank you so much to everyone for logging in and for joining me. So we have a connection, we are subscribed, and then they are just gonna play ping pong between them, just making sure that the connection stays alive. So ping pong, ping pong. All right. The next thing we should do is make sure that we can actually send events or dispatch events to this messages channel. So how are we going to do that? What I want to do first is create a small Laravel command that I can use to send a test message to the channel and make sure that I can see it in the developer console. So let's go ahead and do that. Back in the terminal, I'm just going to do PHP artisan. Or actually, before I create the event, the command, I need an event because we don't have it yet. So PHP artisan make event, and we said we were going to call it message sent. Yeah, that's it. Now we have a new file in app events message sent. We do have to modify this event so that it will broadcast using Laravel Echo. So back to VS Code, let's open our new file in app events message sent. And in order for this, as you can see, it's very straightforward, just a construct and then broadcast on. In this case, by default, it's giving us an array because we now can broadcast on several channels at the same time. But in this scenario, we're just going to use one channel. So I'm going to modify this slightly so that it's more simple. Instead of an array, I'm going to return a channel. And by default, this is using a private channel. We are not going to use private channels just yet. So instead, I'm going to switch to a channel and just return that. And also the channel name, it's messages. All right, now for this event to broadcast using Laravel Echo, I just need to go up here, and as you probably know, just implement should broadcast. Already included here. Illuminate contracts broadcasting should broadcast, and that is it when it comes to the event class. Now this, whenever we dispatch this event, is going to also be broadcasting with Laravel Echo. Okay, now let's create a small command, a small console command to try this out. Let's go back to the terminal and let's do PHP artisan. What was it? Make command. Okay. And let's call this command send message command. Okay, we have a new file in send message command inside app console commands, send message command. And because I want this to look pretty, I'm also going to bring in Laravel prompts. So quick composer require Laravel prompts. All right, back to VS Code. We have app console commands, send message command, and scroll up. For the signature, I'm going to just call it send message. Description, send a message to the chat. And for the handle, we are going to need two things. I'm thinking that this event is going to receive two pieces of data, the name of the person sending the message and the message itself. So we have to do two changes. First of all, let's modify the event message sent to accept those two pieces of data. I can use property promotion in the constructor here to create a public string name and also public string message or text. Let's call it text. Because probably I'm going to have a variable name. Yeah, let's call it text just for now. So now this event takes two pieces of information. Now let's go back to the console command, and I'm going to ask those two things in the console. So let's start with the name, and I'm going to use the text function from Laravel prompts. Give it a label of what is your name. And let's make this required. And we're going to need another one. So let's copy this one, and this will be for the text. What is your message? Required true. So we have the name, we have the text for the message. Now it's time to dispatch the event using message send dispatch. And we pass in the name and the text. And that's it. We should be able to run this command in the terminal, and technically we should be able to see that message show up in the developer console in Google Chrome. So let me go back to Google Chrome real quick. Let me refresh here. Connection, and let me open the terminal, move it over here. little bit smaller maybe. There you go. And let's do PHP artisan send message. What is your name? Let's say it's me. And the message will be hello. It didn't show up. It's just playing ping pong. So let me open the chat real quick and address this to you. Did you do it over HTTPS? No, I haven't done it over HTTPS. And to be honest, when you're working locally, it doesn't really matter because Laravel Reverb, the Laravel Reverb server runs behind the front-facing service. So HTTPS should be handled by whatever you're using, Nginx or Apache. So Reverb server runs behind that. So I opted not to go with HTTPS, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. Well, it matters if you're working locally. There are a couple of steps that you need to follow, but for this example, you can just ignore that part and let's just work over HTTP itself. But my question to you guys, why do you think it didn't work? Why did I dispatch a message? Why did I dispatch the event? And even though we have a successful connection to the channel, why didn't it show up in this terminal? Should have been a line that says, yeah, there is a new message and it has this payload, but it didn't show up. Why do you think that is? I'll give you some time. It took me almost a week, unfortunately, and it doesn't, I mean, it's more time than I care to admit. And this is what I mean by most of the tutorials that I've seen about Laravel Reverb and the documentation, I think they don't explain this explicitly because they assume that if you work with events and dispatching events, then you should already know this. Can you guess what it is? Well, let me tell you. What happens when you dispatch an event? When you dispatch an event in Laravel, it defaults, by default, it sends that event to a queue. And can you guess what is the default queue connection in a new Laravel 11 project? Let me show you. If we go to our .env file and look for the queue connection, it defaults to a database connection. Now, when we installed the project using Laravel New and select SQLite as the database, all of the migrations were run and we should have a jobs table in the database. Sorry. So when we dispatch an event, Laravel is going to take that event and put it in a jobs table. It's going to put it on a queue in the database. And they are going to stay there until you start the queue worker. How do you start a queue worker? You go back to the terminal and you do PHP, and let me open this again and refresh. You go back to the terminal and do PHP artisan queue work. And immediately you see the message sent event that I dispatched before, and it processed that event. And if you see the developer console here, now we see that that event being dispatched to the client, and the client caught that, and it's telling me, yes, I got a new message on this channel, and this is the payload. It took me a while to figure this out because they don't really tell you. So, because I don't want any database queue for when I'm working locally, what you can do is switch the configuration to be instead of a queue connection database, you can use a queue connection sync. When you switch to a sync connection for the queue, That means that there is no database, and whatever dispatched event, whenever you dispatch an event, is going to be executed and handled immediately in the foreground. It's not going to stay on the queue. There won't be any queue. It's just going to fire this event right away. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to the terminal again. I'm going to stop the queue worker. Let me go back to here, and it already refreshed. So what happens if I run that PHP artisan command to send a message? It goes straight through the to the client right here. So yeah, if you're having trouble working with Laravel Reverb and you can't see your events being dispatched to the client, or they're not showing up, go back to the .env file and make sure that either you have your queue worker started, or that your driver for the queue is set to sync. All right. Let me check on the chat again real quick, see how you guys are doing. Queue work, exactly, that's correct. Yeah, it took me a while to remember that. HTTP PHP artisan command. My memory is not that great, but yeah, that was the command. So yeah, and basically what we have right now is the client listens to events, and it's subscribed to a channel. So that's working. And we have a Laravel Reverb server running, and it's catching all those events. So let's actually do something more real. Let's actually create an example. So for this, I'm going to register. Let me close this real quick. I'm going to register here. And nothing new here, it's just a regular Breeze dashboard, but let's create a Volt component that we will use as our chat box. So let's go back to the terminal here, and let's do PHP artisan make Volt. Let's call it chat box. And by default, it's going to use the, not the class API, the other one. But I like the class API, so I have to specify this as class. Now I have a new component in resources, views, Livewire, chatbox.blade.php. So let's go to VS Code and open that. I'm going to close a few things here. So yeah, it's an empty Volt component. Now, in the interest of time, I've already prepared a component, so I don't have to bore you with HTML and CSS classes and Tailwind CSS. So I'm going to share the link of that gist in the description of this video. But for now, let me just go and grab it right away. So it's called Livewire Chatbox component. So first I'm going to copy everything, and then I'm going to give you a rundown of how it works. Copy this, paste it here, and then save. Now what I have to do is include this in the Breeze layout file. So I'm going to open resources, views, layouts, app.blade.php. And near the end, just before the last body tag, I'm going to use Livewire Chatbox and save. And I'm guessing I have an error because in this Chatbox component, I'm using this hero icons package, blade hero icons package. So I'm guessing it's complaining about that, and it is. So let's bring that package as well. So let's do composer require blade UI kit blade hero icons. And yeah, this is just so I can use hero icons as blade components, as I'm doing here. And for this to work, all I have to do is come to the resources folder and create a new folder called SVG. And that's it. So if I go back and refresh, it should work, and it does. So yeah, now I have this chat box here, and you can click on the fill button here to just close it and open it as you see fit. I followed a written tutorial for the design of this box with some of my own additions. I'll be sure to credit the creator of that tutorial if you want to go and check it out. It'll be in the description of this video as well, once we finish the live stream. So let me give you a brief rundown of how this component works. Style-wise is just a bunch of divs, and I'm using Alpine.js to trigger some classes that will open and close the component. Let me close this to give some space. As you can see, I'm just using open equals true to show it by default, and just trigger a few Tailwind CSS classes to trigger the animation of showing up and closing down. Using these two icons from the Blade UI kit to show this little arrow here when it's closed and when it's open, and toggle that. And then I have a for each here that is going to go through this messages array and just display the messages with the name, and I changed this to text. So very simple. And up here in the implementation, all I have is an array of messages, as I said, and then the current message that I'm typing in and sending. And whenever I submit this form component here, or this form, I have a wire submit prevent so that the page doesn't load completely. And I'm calling the add message function here. And that add message function is dispatching the message sent event, passing in the authorized username and the message that we typed, and then just erasing or resetting the value of message. Then I have another function that is going to serve as the handler for whenever we get a dispatched event, either by this one or any other places that we dispatch the event. So this is called onMessageSent, and this will be the handler. And the handler takes in the event payload, and all I'm doing for now is just dumping that variable to the screen. Now, how do we listen to Laravel Echo events from Livewire? We can use attributes. So we are going to create an attribute here, and Livewire has an attribute called on, which is from Livewire attributes on. And this takes in the string that identifies the channel and the event that we are listening to. First of all, we have to specify that this is from echo. So we do echo, colon, and then comes the channel that we are listening into. This will be messages. And then comma, and here comes the event that we are listening for. In this case is message sent. And that's it. That will turn this function into the handler for this message sent event, and we'll pass the event payload into the function. So let's try it out. If I save this and then go to the browser, refresh for good measure, and then just say hello there. And as you can see, we have the event payload dumped into the screen, and the payload is just an array, an associative array with the name and the message text. Now we can use that to actually show the messages in the chat box. So go back to VS Code, and instead of dumping this, I'm simply going to say this messages, which is an array. I'm going to add the event itself because it's an associative array, and I can just use that in the iteration that I'm doing here. So for all the messages as message, I'm going to display the message name and the message text. Okay, say that, go back here, and now I can say hello Reverb. And there it is. That is coming from Laravel Echo. And to show you that it actually works, I'm going back to the terminal, and I'm going to use that artisan command again to send another message. In this case, let's say this is a bot. How can I help you? And it works. Isn't that just awesome? Like I said, Reverb is a godsend. I love using Pusher as my WebSocket service, but even though it's great and has a very it has a great free tier, the ability to just do it yourself in your own server, it's just amazing. Now, quick check on the chat to see how you guys are doing. Thank you. I learned a lot today. I'm glad that I was able to teach you something or help you with something. I've been having a lot of fun learning it myself. That's why I couldn't wait to show it to you today. But let's touch real briefly on private messages, because as of now, anyone can listen into this messages channel. Sometimes that's not what you want. In this case, let's say that we just want users that are logged into the panel to be able to listen into these messages. For that, we're going to go back to VS Code real quick. And the first thing we need to change is the event itself. So let's open message sent. And as you saw in the beginning, this was set to private channel. So we can just set this to private. And that's it. Now, what happens if I just do that? If I go back here and let's refresh. If I try to send a message now, it goes to the void, because right now, the Livewire component, we subscribe to a messages channel, but we try to do it via a public channel. To tell Livewire to subscribe to a private channel, we need to go back to VS Code into our Livewire component, and instead of using echo in the on attribute, we use echo private. Now the two of them are talking to each other, and there is one more step though, but let me show you what happens if I just do that. I'm going to open this here, and I'm going to refresh. Just like this, there is no apparent error, but if you switch to all here, you can see that there is an auth request that has failed with a 403 forbidden code. And that is Laravel trying to authenticate the user to this channel, and it's failing. So if I try to send a message, still doesn't work because I have not been authenticated to this messages private channel. How do you do that? Well, if you remember from the beginning, we have now a new routes file called channels. So let's go and check that out. This file is located in routes channels.php. And this was already scaffolded for us with an example with subscribing to a app models user ID. Yes, you can subscribe to specific channels identified with some kind of ID. And I'm going to show you how to use that in a fictional scenario just at the end. But for now, this here is going to be our channel. I'm not going to use any IDs for this. All I want is for the user to be logged in. And we do need a user because that is the first parameter that we receive here. This is actually an instance of the user model. And you can use that to make various checks against the channel ID that you're trying to subscribe to. But in this case, I just want to return true. As far as you're logged in, you can listen into this channel. Of course, we have to change the channel to messages. And make sure to remove any extra parameters. We are not receiving any more payload, and save. Now, if after I do that, if I go back here and it already refreshed, thanks to Laravel Vite, and you can see that the auth request is it's returning a 200 message status code. That means that I was authenticated, and if I go to the WebSocket channel, I am subscribed now to a private messages channel. That's why we have to modify the event in the Livewire component to tell it this is a private channel. Actually, this messages channel is private, so everything should be in place. That means that we can go back in, just say hi there again, and now it's back to working, but this time we are working with private channels. And we can go back to the terminal and try to send another message. And it's still working. Now, you don't need to be authorized or logged in to send messages or to dispatch events. You don't need authentication for that. You need authentication to listen to the channels where those events are being broadcasted to. It's an important distinction. Now, let's say that, for example, I want to create private channels so that there is a chat room and only certain users have access to that chat room. I'm not going to create the complete implementation of this. It's just a fake scenario. So let's say, for example, in the messages sent. No, not this. Well, actually, yes, this. Let's say that this private channel is for a chat room. So let's say rooms. And we want to log into a room ID. So that's the private channel that we want. We want a messages.rooms and then the room ID where all the messages are going to. Okay, let's say that that's the implementation. I'm not going to save so that there are no errors. But now, let's say that in the channels route, we can receive that ID. So messages, rooms, ID, and that will be the second parameter. So let's say, for example, that we only want to allow users that have been granted access to this room to listen to those messages. So let's say, for example, return, let's say users. Let's imagine that the user has a relationship to a room, to many rooms, or the user can be subscribed to many rooms. So let's say that user rooms, that'll be a collection, and let's say contains that ID. Not exactly a complete implementation, but let's just imagine that, yeah, I only want users who have been subscribed or have been added to this room to be able to listen to the messages room and that ID specifically. So that will return true or false, and that will allow the user to either listen to those messages or not. Then the third part, it's in the Livewire component. Now let's pretend that this component receives or finds the room or has, let's say, public room, which is a model room. And we initialize this in the init, or this is passed in as a parameter to the component. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that this Livewire component has a room attribute to the specific room that we are listening to for messages at this point. So how do we get the room ID, or how do we pass the room ID into the channel here so that we can tell Laravel Echo, I want to listen to messages, rooms, and this specific room here. So imagine that this room has an ID. You can simply use dynamic variables and say room ID. This will be parsed and converted to room and whatever ID that room variable has. So this will be, if the room has an ID of 1, this on message sent handler will listen for messages, rooms, and the specific room ID 1. And if the user has access to that room, then he or she will be able to listen for messages on that specific room ID 1. And that's how you use private messages and subscribe to specific channels via IDs and private events, private channels. So yeah, that's basically it. Let me turn back to the chat. Nope. Amazing, really good content. Congrats. Always a pleasure. No problem. Let me go back to big screen real quick. So yeah, thank you so much, guys, for joining me today in this kind of a impromptu tutorial. That's how you use Laravel Reverb. I hope, and I really hope that what I showed you today has helped you in any way, specifically that part with the queue, because that took me a while to figure out, unfortunately. But that's something that's on me. I should have known that dispatch events go to a queue, and if that queue worker is not working, then you won't see any messages. But yeah. If you found any of this helpful, we're going to stop here. If you found any of the content that you found that I gave you today is helpful, what am I doing? I don't know how to speak English. If you found any of this helpful, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next